welcome to our night together. Zoom at 8. Tonight is Tuesday. We meet here every Tuesday night, and we are excited to have another speaker tonight who we've not heard from anything about LEED buildings. I'm excited to have you meet Charlie tonight. Again, my name is Julianne Peterson. I'm with Old Capital Lending, and if you're not familiar with Old Capital, we are a premier provider of debt, especially for multifamily. So we've closed 5,800 loans, and we close about $1 billion a year. So there's only 11 of us. That's a lot of volume, and we are open and wanting to look at your deals. So I would ask that if you're here, that you would let us have the opportunity to be able to turn over a term sheet or give you some feedback on any of the deals that you're considering. And let me do an introduction because Charlie was introduced to me by Lane Bean, and a lot of you know who Lane is. Lane came from small multifamily and got sick and tired of standing in line and meeting up with 30 other investor groups and said, what can I do to affect change here? And he went into development. And so Lane has such a great wealth of knowledge and has brought so much value. I'm invested in quite a few of his deals. As many of you know, I just did a 1031 tick into his deal in Tyler, Texas. So Charlie Cichetti is his contact that I just am so thankful that he's coming here tonight. So a little bit about Charlie, that over the course of his career, Charlie has personally taught and trained over 10,000 professionals in person about LEED, the green building movement, and how to pass LEED exams. His green building education company, GBES, has over 130,000 professionals around the world who use their study tools and CE materials to help maintain their credentials after Charlie and his team help them pass their exams. Charlie also advocates for LEED and the green building movement to thousands of people monthly, as you can tune into and listen to their weekly podcast, Green Building Matters. Charlie is an expert in both the designing of green buildings and the operation of green buildings. He and his team work on large office buildings in major cities across the United States. Charlie, welcome to Zoom at 8. How are you tonight?
Thanks, Julianne. I appreciate it. And I got some good energy with all these check-ins. And after an intro like that, it might be 8:20 where I'm at in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's where I'm based. But I appreciate you bringing me on. Lane and I are in a mastermind group together. I've known Lane for a while. And I love that he's putting in a lot of extra electric charging stations, even though that property outside of Dallas-Fort Worth is not a LEED building. He asked me for energy efficiency recommendations. Hey, what about this? What can we do with some leases, and what can we do with our EV charging? So he and I have talked sustainability for a while, and maybe we can have a little chat tonight. So appreciate you having me on. Who's heard of LEED before, and do we have any LEED professionals? Because you can get some continuing ed tonight if you need to log some hours. So I don't know if we have any LEED APs or LEED Green Associates. Let me know. I'll give you a certificate of completion. Okay. What I'm hoping to do is
Charlie, can I just interrupt you for just a second? If you guys would all be so kind and give your attention to Charlie, if you look up at the right side, there is a view, and then you can give all of your attention to Charlie instead of looking at everybody doing things in their little box. That's very distracting, right? So give us your attention to Charlie. This is excellent information, and it's not just for office buildings. Charlie is seeing a lot of this information that he's sharing with you going forward in, buildings, multifamily buildings. So it's really important that you are knowledgeable of this, because you may have some tenants that need or want this and are looking for this just value add. So Charlie, take it away.
All right, thanks very much. Yeah, I want to talk about green buildings, but I also want to talk about healthy buildings, because the big problem we're solving right now is not just return to work, but hey, in your case, of course, multifamily, how do I know that this is a healthy building? So I'm going to make sure I chime in on that and some pandemic response programs you can get some best practices out of. It'll help with your marketing, your leasing. So I'll show a few things on screen here. Again, I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and I have two main businesses in the green building movement. I too would call myself a serial entrepreneur. I've been fortunate to get into green buildings. But my background is I went to Georgia Tech, got into commercial construction. Then I worked for a large real estate developer called Opus Corporation. 2008 happened, and it was a blessing in disguise. They laid off 2,000 of us, even though it was an awesome place to work. And that nudged me to finally go ahead and start my own green building consulting firm. So we do quite a bit of training. I love to teach, and that's through our company, GBES.com, training architects, engineers, contractors, real estate professionals about LEED and the new WELL movement, and then also continuing education and all of the credentials. But then I also have a consulting firm. So we actually are fortunate to work on new buildings out of the ground. We also work on retrofits all over the country, some international. We'll help save energy, save water, green cleaning, green pest control, recycling. So we're going to do all that. So I built up a team here within my small businesses. Pass some tests, have some credentials, but let's just say happy to talk to you about a little bit of my journey, but especially in the last couple of years, how we moved from not just green buildings, which are all about, what's our impact on the environment, to the healthy building movement and what's our impact on the people that are going to be in the buildings. Just a couple fun facts, though. When we look at some of the states, I love to check in. We've got people all over here tonight. But as you look back, 2019 going into 2020, these are some of the states that are very active with LEED certification. So LEED, for those that don't know, it's a green building stamp of approval. We really have either designed and built or renovated a building to be a green building. It's the most popular program in the world now, and it comes from the U.S. Green Building Council. Okay. In some cases, there are some mandates. I know we have someone here with the government. Maybe it was GSA. I was trying to track that check-in. In some cases, we do have projects like military projects. We have government projects that are going to say, look, we have to do LEED or equal. But a lot of it is driven by the private sector and marketing and competitiveness and corporate sustainability mandates. We're going to do it. It's the right thing to do. And so your states may be pretty active with number of or square footage of LEED buildings certified. This was 2019. And so one thing I want to point out that this movement is growing, okay? Well, I'm going to talk today really just about LEED and just some sustainability best practices and energy efficiency, and maybe even whether there's some rebates for that. I've got to talk about the healthy building movement. There's two new programs that have come on the scene, and one of those is WELL, and one of those is FitWell, and that's the CDC research-backed program about wellness and wellness at your property. So that's what I'm going to hit on today. There's some other ones. Some of you may have heard of GBES. If you haven't, maybe in the future you will, but it's how green is your portfolio of real estate. Some of my team's best clients in New York City, they have billions of dollars in real estate, and for them to attract investors, they actually get scored on how green is their portfolio and how do they handle their environmental, social, and governance. So while that might not be impacting your business yet, I assure you ESG, and one day you might need to report out. One day, Julianne, that might be part of underwriting. That isn't yet. It's happening in the Class A office world. And then carbon. Really, the conversation is shifting from not just, hey, is this building a green building? Is it a healthy building? But what are we doing with carbon? And we want to make sure that we're meeting some mandates. Again, we do a lot of work in New York City. That's where there's a law that just passed called Local Law 97, and there's actually some carbon penalties in 2024 and 2030 if your buildings haven't reduced their overall emissions related to efficiency. So that's what I do. Of course, some of you, I think, checked in. I know you're in California, so you already experienced this with Title 24 and more stringent energy code and energy standards. But today, I just want to chat a little bit about what's happened with green buildings. So think LEED, and then the new the healthy building movement, okay? This evolution, though, some of you raised your hand and you've heard of LEED before. Maybe you've worked on a LEED project. So we have 20 years worth of LEED projects, okay? The first LEED projects came out in the year 2000. So we can design and build green, and that's like LEED for new construction, or LEED for K through 12 schools, or LEED for healthcare, or LEED retail. So speculative developers, like some of my clients, like Hines, based in Houston, Texas, we build a lot of LEED core and shell office buildings for them, or the tenants that move in later, maybe they do LEED for interiors. My point is, everything on the left, it's a one-time plaque, it's a one-time certification. These days, since more people understand LEED, the consultants, the architect, the MEP, the contractor, it's only a 1% to 2% premium these days to go for LEED on a new construction or major renovation. Everything on the left is we design and build green. It's a one-time plaque. But there is a program, and this will affect a lot of your multifamily, that even if you don't go for the plaque, I want to give you the resources, use this as guidelines. It's LEED for existing buildings, operations, and maintenance. We do quite a bit of retrofit, greening up existing building stock to get an advantage, okay? And so we want to make sure we're not just saving energy and saving water. Those things you have to do. But we want to bring in outside fresh air. Okay, we've got to do that too. But that's where we get into our greener landscaping policies, right? Do we compost the grass clippings? Do we use low smoke oil? Do we use low decibel leaf blowers? Do we use better overall de-icers if you're in a colder climate? Those things add up, and some of your tenants, potential tenants, they might care. At the end of the day, though, the program on the right, LEED for existing buildings, we actually have to recertify every 5 years. We have to prove that we still operate as a green building. So I think that's one of the myths that we see, is a lot of people think it's just LEED. We build it to a LEED standard, but keep in mind, we can design and build green, but then we need to follow up and make sure we operate green day to day as an overall energy efficient, water efficient, green policy set of buildings. Okay, so that's the evolution of LEED. 20 years of LEED. It's really growing, really globally, but here in the U.S., there's still quite a bit of emphasis on, if you want to get a green stamp of approval, you might want to get a LEED certification. Now, I realize some of your B and C office buildings here, they might not be a LEED building, but again, I want you to pull some best practices from a program that is mainstream like LEED. Okay. Some of the projects that we get to work on. This is a project for Hines. This is in Minneapolis. We have an office in Minneapolis. I'm based in Atlanta at our headquarters. And this is something that we're seeing, Julianne, you mentioned this, is Hines is building several apartment office combos in different cities. We're also working on a project. Some of you are in Dallas, Texas. This is Maple Terrace, and this is another apartment office combo. So I realize these are Class A. I'm going to get to some tips on B and C. I just want to let you know some trends that are happening with major developers like Hines. It's one of our best clients. So these office apartment combos on the same site. And what we're doing for these projects is both LEED certification out of the ground and the new WELL certification. So we're covering the box for this is a green building and this is a healthy building, and that's helping with them as they deliver these projects. Okay, so I've been talking for a little while. Any questions so far just about LEED and the history of LEED? And I want to throw up some examples on the residential side. Any questions so far? All right, we'll keep going. So for those not as familiar with a project that's going to pursue a LEED certification, you can do new construction, like I mentioned. I'm not going to go through this entire document. This is what we call our LEED scorecard. So just trust that we're going to get additional credit for where we're located, right? Can we also have bike racks and changing rooms? So here's a pro tip to your B and C apartments. Make sure that you really have not just some bike racks, but make sure you actually have bike tools, the right air pumps. Just make sure you're really accommodating for someone that may want to commute or might want a bike kind of maintenance area. It's not going to be a high cost for you. It's going to be a differentiator. While if we go for the official plaque, we get extra points for it. So make sure you really do better there. Highlight that. I mentioned some of the work that Lane's doing. I mean, he put in so many electric charging stations. I think it's phenomenal. There's incentives for that. And the reality is, I've been driving electric cars for 10 years. I love it. Hopefully you can tell that electric cars are coming out left and right with all the major automakers. So you're going to need to think about that infrastructure. I think it'll be part of deals in the future. Can I, lease a car, buy a car? Where am I going to plug it up? Do you have that? If it's not affecting you now, it'll probably affect you in the next 3 or 4 years. And so these are just some things that if you learn more about a program like LEAD, while we might want to officially go after these strategies, I think you could take this document, take a look at some of your projects you already have going or have coming up, and just pull some best practices off of it. We also get into sustainable sites. We want to make sure we take a look at our open space. We take a look at our native adaptive plants and protecting and restoring habitat. Can we capture rainwater? Are we allowed to in that market? We, of course, in most markets want to put a white roof to reflect light and shed heat and reduce that heat island effect. We want to make sure in some areas, common areas especially, we can reduce the light pollution, the light that's just, lighting up the night sky. It's just wasting energy. So again, if you ever want to go for a full plaque, I can walk you through that, but I do think you can pull some best practices forward into your buildings. Now, when it comes to water efficiency, of course, that's probably typically going to be your cost. Really, the technology continues to get better here. It's not just about beating current plumbing code in your restrooms, but we really can get aggressive with all the different types of water that are used around our sites. I'm a big fan of making sure you really have smart irrigation in place. Maybe it ties into the weather reports. Maybe you want to make sure that you have moisture sensors in the soil. Engage a landscape architect to make sure, hey, this is what I inherited when I bought this site. Can we rezone it? Can we cap some heads? Again, low cost. It's a best practice. It's going to be water efficient. It's better for the environment, and it's better for your operating costs. So let's just make sure we're doing those things. Energy, of course. This, if you were ever asked, where's the money when it comes to green buildings, it's still around energy efficiency. Okay. So you want to make sure, it's one thing to do deep retrofits and replace equipment if you're taking over a project, but it's another thing just to tune up what you have. So make sure you really get someone to come out and do not just maintenance, but really commissioning if you're getting into some larger systems there. Let's skip past that. Does anyone have any renewables on any of their projects? Any solar? Does anyone have any renewables? And again, I'm trying to read the audience here. Maybe that's something that if not yet, soon, just trust that there is money available there. It's one thing to have energy efficiency projects installed on any of your projects to get some money back from your utility company. You can also depreciate that, right? Section 179D or cost segregation. I'm sure you guys talk about that on here a lot. So just know that energy efficiency and also renewable projects, you can really accelerate that depreciation and makes good business sense there if needed. All right, so also just continue with LEAD though. The other categories do have a lot to do with materials. And then the indoor environmental quality section. And this is one that a long time ago, I worked on a LEED Platinum apartment in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It was the first LEED project there. It was a public-private partnership. And we did LEED on the projects. But what we did is we also, as you were a new tenant into that apartment complex, we had a green cleaning welcome basket, right? How can you make sure as a base building, a set of apartments, that you're trying to show, here's what we did to go green. Here's what we've done as part of our pandemic response to build up confidence that this is a healthy building, but something simple like that. And so we made sure every tenant had a green cleaning kind of starter kit as they moved in, give them a replacement LED bulb these days, not even CFLs. So what can you do to carry on that narrative? Maybe they'll talk about that with others. Maybe that'll help the business side of your leasing. But one of the big things to look out for is the indoor environmental quality section, okay? While that might seem like it's air quality quite a bit, we really do get into some other factors, even just that connection to the outdoors, views, and acoustics. So I won't go through all that for LEED, but I just wanted to give you a glimpse. If we're officially going for a LEED certification, it's a pretty comprehensive program. There's some things you have to do. Those are called prerequisites. There's a lot of things that are optional, but if we get enough points at the end of the day, we can earn certified, silver, gold, or there's a big jump up to platinum. So please trust that 20 years worth of LEED buildings, you can pull forward some of this and make sure that your buildings are better for the environment. Any questions about LEED and green buildings? Anything you've seen or heard or read? Because then I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about healthy buildings too.
Well, I do have some things in the chat that I think would probably be helpful to go through right now.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, we could I could probably scroll through some of these.
Sure.
Hang on.
Let's see, 3 at the end, the costs.
All right, you can go ahead. How does it provide ROI? That is a huge question.
Sure. Well, if you want to get an official LEED certification, you actually have to do better than your current energy code. You have to do better than plumbing code. So next thing you know, you're forced to reduce your operating expenses. You're forced to save energy and save water, of course. So there's the savings part of it from operating costs. And then, of course, there's marketing. And, are you one of the first to do this in your area? When it comes to some of our institutional investors we work with, they really underwrite LEED buildings to be much more valuable. I can send you the studies on it, the math on it. So I really think that from either we're going to save and reduce our cost because a LEED building has to save more energy and water than a different building down the road, to the marketing advantage, to is this a green space that I might want to live in? So I think that you're going to get some credit there. The U.S. Green Building Council will highlight you in case studies and really say, yeah, it's been third party validated. This is a green building. All the way over to some corporate sustainability. Maybe you start to become known as the green apartment owner in your area. And next thing you know, that gives you an advantage there. So I could go down a long list, but the simplest one is literally, if you want to go for a LEED certification, you have to save energy and save water, or you can't even play the game.
Amazing. Okay, so how hard is it to retrofit a 60s or 70s vintage property?
Well, we always want to start with efficiency first. The most energy efficient building I've ever been in is in Golden, Colorado. It's where the National Renewable Energy Lab is. It's where the government tests solar panels and wind turbines. And when you take a tour there, they just simply say, look, you got to save as much as possible first. And then it's just a lot easier, right? We wouldn't need as many solar panels. We wouldn't need as many offsets if we're buying green power offsets. So I'm always going to go efficiency first. And I always like to divide it into 2 buckets, no and low cost. And you determine where's your cutoff for that. Is it $2,000, $2,500 a project? Or, what are those deep retrofits? Can you do some PACE financing and tie that into your property taxes? Can you do the cost segregation, the 179D, if you're trying to find ways to do this? I'm sure a lot of you are changing out HVAC systems and lighting if you take over an older asset like that. But, have you really run the numbers even on some window retrofits, added insulation? I know some of you are like, hey, if it's a net lease, I don't know. I'm not going to be paying the power bill. But if it's a gross lease or you want to get creative and maybe really get known for your utilities are included, right? Be different. The next thing you know, you're going to want to go to the roof, the insulation, think about the glass. But of course, start with HVAC and lighting. Take a look how the fresh air gets into the spaces. So how hard is it? I mean, I do a lot of office buildings. Admittedly, our apartments are more new construction. Retrofitting an older garden style apartment. That's what I would do, though. If I were on your project, I would just list out all of the potential energy projects and calculate the ROI and the man and woman power savings on that maintenance. See where you can get incentives and just be willing to do as many of those as you can. I think that if it's not happening yet, when you go to sell that property, you're going to get credit. You're going to get that money back. When I bought my house 8 years ago here outside of Atlanta, I'm asking for the gas bills, the electric bills. The county I live in, you actually have to change out the toilets before a home transacts. They force you to come to more water efficient toilets. So part of this is a little bit of a leap of faith that if it hasn't affected your business yet, I promise you it's going to. And so you might as well get a hold of it ahead of time.
What kind of special or additional monitoring devices would be required, and what does that cost look like?
Sure. Yeah, good question. to get certifications like we work on, usually we're coming in and doing some manual air quality testing or water quality testing, and then we can leave. However, especially with the pandemic, we are seeing a lot more real-time IAQ, real-time indoor air quality monitoring. There's some companies we have partnerships with or we pilot. One I like is Aware, AWAIR. I have some of those here in my house. So as far as real-time sensors, air quality, and certain samplings of a multi-tenant apartment, that would be great. I think common areas for sure, but it's going to come down to energy. You need to know where you're using energy. Can you sub-meter and put some Demon sub-meters on all the water heating? Can you put that on all the lighting? I mean, how far can you go to see really how is energy and electricity used around your property? Those are things I want to be doing if I were you. Depending on if you have a house meter or if you have just a ton of sub-meters behind your common area meter for all your apartments, I would suggest two things. You benchmark. You can get an Energy Star certification. That's an EPA award. It's low cost. All of you should benchmark your apartments in Energy Star. But then number two is consider, do you have a relationship with the utility company where they can actually give you a lot more data on what time of day or night your asset is really using a lot of electricity. So the more information you have, the more you can coach your tenants on just overall, here's how they can reduce their bills too. So I would focus on some energy trends, but really get ready for real-time IAQ, indoor air quality. That's happening everywhere I look.
Wow. I'd love that EPA award. I think that would be very valuable as a selling feature. What are some of the most popular non-financial returns have you seen with this application or implementation rather?
Again, if we're still talking LEED right now, a lot of my clients that roll up into a large investment portfolio, they're getting credit for how green is your portfolio. So it does help them attract investors. I think it really does help depending on where you're at. Some of you are in Austin, I think. Some of you, I'm not sure if you're in Washington, D.C. area, but if you're going to work at a building that happens to be a LEED building, a green building, you could be coming home and asking those questions. What have you done here to make this a green building? But what have you done to make this a healthy building? So I can send you some studies on the fact that LEED buildings are worth more. And here's why, and here's the math on it. Here's the 20-year studies. But I would say it's checking boxes for corporate sustainability and responsibility, for some additional marketing, and then absolutely for if you are part of a larger investment fund, you're being asked, especially from international investors bringing money in, how green is your portfolio? You really are. Quentin mentioned water quality testing. Absolutely, I would agree. Right now, there's also quite a bit of water quality testing. It's one thing to have efficiency, how efficient is the toilet or the faucet. It's another thing to say, hey, our water quality here, actually, we've had it tested, and it's really good. It's really at an above par level. I think we take it for granted here in the United States that we have clean air and we have clean water. But it's important to actually test that and see how good is the water you're going to be providing there to your tenants.
Do you, how close does this LEED certification come to the passive house standard? I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is, Charlie? The passive house standard?
Yeah, Passive House is a good program that comes out of Germany, and it's really about a super energy efficient home or building. So they're related, right? But Passive House is going to focus extremely on energy efficiency. I mean, just uber energy efficiency. It's a great program. And there are buildings, some apartments that get Passive House certification. LEED is going to be even more well-rounded than that, because we're going to look at water and where we're located and transportation and materials and the air quality. So LEED is pretty comprehensive. Passive House, great program. I can send you some links on that. I would definitely Google that. Very energy efficient homes or buildings. And you can get some good ideas coming out of that too.
That's all I have for now. If you could continue on, you've got 15 minutes.
Sure. Well, let's talk about healthy buildings. All right. So what's happened for the last 20 years? We've had LEED buildings. That's what I've made my career out of, green buildings. But in the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a new movement for what I call wellness real estate, or the healthy building movement. There is an overlap. If you're a green building, like a LEED building, and you want to go for a wellness certification officially at your property, there is a head start. There is an overlap. But what happens now is it's not just about designing and building green, operating efficiently, operating green, but now we get into behavior and really how are people impacted inside of our buildings. And so there's some new programs around it. A program like the WELL building standard has categories like this. Air, okay, well now it's not just about saving energy like on a LEED project, but let's make sure we don't have sick buildings. So we get pretty heavy into air quality. Water, we just talked about it. LEED would want us to save water and be better for the environment, but a program like WELL, all caps, WELL, is going to focus on water quality and water testing. If we have food service, we get into nourishment for some of your apartments. Seriously, you might want to consider some healthy vending machines. Light, well, believe it or not, on the LEED project, we're going to focus on energy efficiency, carbon emission reduction. But on a WELL project, the lights above all of you right now, above me, they're going to affect how we sleep tonight. So we start to look at circadian rhythm. It's not just about lighting efficiency, but now it's about lighting quality and glare, natural light. If you're going to have a fitness center, this one could affect some of your properties. We want to make sure that we don't just have a few pieces of equipment and a few dumbbells. You know, we really want to make sure that we've right-sized our fitness centers, maybe on a monthly or quarterly basis. You have a trainer come in and help build up confidence with your tenants. Here's the proper form to use that piece of equipment, or here's some basic exercise programs you can use. That's easy, that's low cost. But a program like WELL, because we're trying to create wellness programs in and around any of our building types, it's going to actually tell you, you have to do that. Let's really focus on something simple like that monthly or quarterly training. But then we start to get into thermal comfort, acoustics, least toxic materials, and then some other things for mind and community. So mind also includes like biophilia, that connection to the outdoors, plants that can actually help improve air quality, and then the community has an entire category there. We start to work in some HR policies as well. But this is what WELL does. This is the new WELL building standard that we're working quite a bit on. You can also earn bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. Some of the projects that we've been fortunate to have access to, this is one of my clients in New York. We didn't work on this building, but this is One Vanderbilt. This is the newest skyscraper to open and in New York City. So this is a LEED and WELL skyscraper out of the ground. And you know, they're really focused on making sure they're delivering a building that's not just a green building, but a healthy building. Okay. I've got a lot of other links, knowing I was going to talk to this crowd, that I'll just probably send over to Julianne about multifamily developers, how they're underwriting the wellness side of it. Okay. One of my clients in California, Kilroy, they did open a new residential tower. They achieved WELL certification there. You know, here's some others that I pulled up. And again, I realize a lot of these are, you know, Class A, but I think you'll be able to see the trend that's already happening. It's been happening for 5 or 6 years, but with the pandemic hitting, there's just a new movement for, is this a healthy building or not? And I think you need to be ready for it. So now, while a lot of the tax incentives, utility rebate incentives are still for energy efficiency, and you may want to consider green building best practices. If you haven't done those yet, you still need to start there. But I did want to show you a clip. Some of you may have seen this on TV. And so let me pull this up real quick. Hopefully the audio will come through okay, but I think it's worth to watch. It's 1 minute and 30 seconds. And so why don't we watch this? I think this is going to catch everybody's attention. 1 second.
If you want to get back to your favorite places and feel confident they have put your health and safety first,
look for the WELL Health Safety Seal.
Look for the WELL Health Safety Seal.
Look for the WELL Health Safety Seal.
I'm Dr. Richard Carmona.
the 17th Surgeon General of the United States of America. This is the Well Health Safety Seal from the International Well Building Institute, the global authority on healthy buildings.
The Well Health Safety Rating was informed by years of research and input from hundreds of leading virologists, public health experts, epidemiologists, and building professionals around the world.
You'll see it at schools, offices, banks, childcare centers, all the places we go.
The Well Health Safety Seal means that we'll feel better going into restaurants,
Theaters, stores, hotels.
Stadiums, all the places that we love.
Everything may look the same, but the Well Health Safety Seal means that your health and safety are top of mind when it comes to
cleaning and sanitizing procedures,
Air and water quality management,
Emergency preparedness programs,
and health services.
So look for the Well Health Safety Seal outside.
and feel more confident going inside. Learn more about the Well Health Safety Rating at wellhealthsafety.com.
So that's pretty cool, and that's catching everybody's attention right now. Again, we've had 5 or 6 years of Well and Fit Well, which are healthy building programs we've been consulting on for a while. But when the pandemic hit last year, they came out with a pandemic response program, and it's called Well Health Safety Rating. It might be something to consider. It's pretty low cost. It's focused on your policies that you implemented as you run your buildings. Here's what we did to handle the pandemic. Here's our pandemic response. Here's that confidence that all of you also need to build up right now. Is this a healthy building or not? So we focus on policies, our green cleaning, maybe antimicrobial high touch surfaces on elevator buttons or door handles that are high touch. We want to make sure in some cases, maybe put in some UV light on some coils. Maybe we have some of that kind of cleaning in the high touch areas. How do you handle communication? How do you really make sure that if it's an area where there's usually a lot of people getting together, you've actually put up right signage and traffic flow. So a lot of you probably did some of this, but I assure you, in the world I work in, this new program, the Well Health Safety Rating, very popular right now. We're seeing huge brands go after it for all their office sites. I've asked a friend of mine at the authority to pull up apartments, and I can send that to Julianne later. But if you're not wanting to go for the official plaques, I was hoping to come in here tonight and just say, look, this is what's happening in office, in Class A, apartment. If you don't want to get the full plaque, use these as just some best practices. Pull forward some things that you really think you might need to go ahead and implement, because this is happening, and it may work its way into your world soon.
Terrific. I want to be able to offer everybody that we, come in contact with what is happening, because our world is small in multifamily, but you do need to think globally what's happening in the world, and you don't want to be the last one on the block to be implementing these or to educate yourself. So I think that, boy, Charlie, some really great information. I had a couple questions. Have you heard of eProperty Care? This company provides water censorship and more to the entire location. Is that something that you know about?
I'm not familiar with that one, but if you have real-time water flow or water quality or real-time indoor air quality, I think that's a good place to be, and that's someone you should talk to and maybe do a pilot project. So I'm not familiar with that company, but we're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah. What kind of financial or government assistance is available for making a new construction building LEED certified? Great question, Rick. Always, I can count on you for good questions.
So again, there's some mandates in your municipality. So sometimes they'll give you some property tax breaks, but the reality is it's going to go back to energy efficiency. So you're going to really want to make sure you're taking advantage of those tax credits, cost segregation, 179D, as well as your local utility rebates. So that's where the money will be to support a LEED project. If there are mandates though, usually they're a little flexible there when it comes to some kind of relief on the back end. In New York State, if you have a LEED home, you can actually abate your property taxes for 10 years, but that's only if it's been adopted by your county or city within New York State. So if you're building or renovating like a single family home, talk about New York, expensive property taxes, there can be some property tax abatement. So you're just gonna have to look a little more locally, but there could be some incentives there.
Fantastic. So Brian Briscoe asked about Fannie and Freddie, which is my area of expertise. Are they still doing green loans? And if so, what's the interest rate difference? So just like kind of affordability that Fannie and Freddie get involved with, we do see green. It kind of flows in and out. We can quote it. It's typically between 15 and 50 bips less expensive. So it is out there. You do have to have a due diligence kind of, we go in, look at it, give you some information about it. If you want to implement it, great. If not, then the rates, the loan rates would go higher. But it's something definitely to be considering. Anybody else in here that has a question before Charlie heads on out or can join us for our networking? Anybody else? All right. Well, so I want to make sure that, Charlie, how do we get a hold of you? If we have a question, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
I put my LinkedIn profile in the chat, about 4 messages up. That'd probably be best. Just connect with me. If you had a question, happy to answer that, and we can take it to email or call or Zoom, but probably just LinkedIn would be good.
Fantastic. Well, I do want to thank you so much, Charlie. You've added a lot of value and really coming from a place of awareness, because our life, our world is changing. I mean, look at COVID. It has changed overnight. So being aware of what is out there, what programs are available, I think Charlie has made you guys, offered a lot of help and assistance on how to find these and how to make a difference in your properties. Be aware of it. It is the competition. You want to stay on top of these things. So